We all know the story. Josh McDaniels started his NFL career 6-0 and looked to be the next big coaching sensation. Maybe the next Bill Belichick. Since then, his record as head coach is 7-23. And at the time of this video, his Raiders have started out 2-7, losing games in frustrating and inept ways. Before this year, we made a video outlining how he arrived as the head coach in Vegas, how he ghosted the Colts, and how everyone thought McDaniels was a snake. Now, we have to look at why McDaniels still has a job, analyze his many mistakes as a coach, and what the Raiders can even do about it. This is the ultimate case of buyer's remorse. Thank you, DraftKings, for sponsoring this video. Oh look, we're halfway through the NFL season, and what have we learned? We've learned that if you aren't taking advantage of being a first-time customer on DraftKings and turning $5 into $200 in free bets, you're missing out. Also, with same-game parlays, you can combine your bets and multiply your winnings. Wait, you say sports betting isn't available in your state? No worries, DraftKings has daily fantasy leagues where you can use your noggin to win some cash. I personally have used DraftKings for a long time, and your money is both safe and easy to withdraw. So far, I'm doing pretty good this season. Download the DraftKings Sports app now, and new customers use promo code FivePoints spelled out and receive $200 in free bets when placing a $5 wager. Again, download the DraftKings app from the link below and use promo code FivePoints for $200 in free bets. Part 1. Starting with the aftermath. The 2021 Raiders were an unmitigated disaster off the field. John Gruden resigned over emails. Henry Ruggs committed vehicular homicide. Damon Arnett went insane. Nate Hobbs got a DUI. And still somehow, led by interim coach Rich Bisaccia, the Raiders made it to the playoffs. Bisaccia, a longtime special teams coordinator, rallied the Raiders to inspiring wins and brought stability to an otherwise chaotic year. However, that was not enough to keep his job. Enter Josh McDaniels, who was signed to a 4-year deal for an undisclosed amount of money. Given that McDaniels was lured away from the Pats when he was making $4 million a year as an OC, it's probably an absurd amount of cash. The Raiders were a team coming off a playoff berth, had a solid roster led by a veteran QB, and were poised to make a run. To them, giving McDaniels a lot of money made sense. But let's see how poor of a return the Raiders got for their investment. Part 2. The disaster unfolding. Coming out of the gate, things were looking up for the Raiders. They traded for all-pro wideout Davante Adams. They signed defensive end Chandler Jones. They extended tight end Darren Waller. Mason Crosby was healthy. They were set up for success. Then the season happened. In week 1, they lost to the Chargers after trailing in the fourth quarter by just a TD. They had a chance to win it, but a late turnover killed it. In week 2, the Raiders sprinted out to a first half 20-0 lead over the Cardinals and led 23-7 in the fourth quarter. Once again, their defense let them down as the Cards tied it in regulation, then the Raiders lost it in OT on a Hunter Renfrow fumble and return. Game over, and a bad omen for things to come. The Raiders were dropped to 0-3 at the hands of the Titans, and once again, the Raiders had a chance to tie it late, but failed to execute. Josh McDaniels would get his first Raiders win over an arguably worse off team, the Broncos, to climb to 1-3. And then the injuries started mounting up. Hunter Renfrow was already out. Brandon Parker, DJ Turner, Jordan Jenkins, Anthony Averett, and Micah Kiser, and others got the
unit lost.
The linebacker core was so decimated, they signed Blake Martinez off the scrap heap. Now, these are things that McDaniels cannot control, but when you look at what they dealt with last year, and with Carr, Waller, and Adams being healthy, you figure they could still move the ball, which they did in week 5 against the Chiefs, battling hard against their division rival, and again jutting out to a 17-0, then 20-7 lead, with McDaniels pulling some of the right levers, like on this 4th and 1. However, that lead would get erased in a matter of minutes. Bizarre things started to happen. The Chiefs missed a field goal with 9:25 left in the game, but somehow the Raiders held during the play, giving the ball back to the Chiefs, who would score a TD to put them up 30-23. The Raiders would answer back, and though there was questionable reffing throughout this entire game, this next call would fall squarely on McDaniels' shoulders. With 4:27 left in the game following a TD, the Raiders chose to go for 2, and they didn't get it. They would end up losing by a point. The Raiders would beat Houston, a dead-ass shitty team, handily the next week, but their game against the Saints would be an outright embarrassment. A 24-point shellacking to the Saints, who were 2-5 at the time, and a beating so thorough it might get this video age restricted. The Raiders did not cross midfield in the game until their final drive, where Jarrett Stidham had come in for Derek Carr because his ass was getting pounded all game like Riley Reef.
Riley Reef, the last one right here.
The Raiders were outplayed, outmanned, and outcoached by a team that was 3 games under 500, and somehow, this was not their most humiliating loss. The following week, the Raiders once again jumped out to a 17-point lead, this time on the Jags, another sub-500 team, only to blow that and lose by 7. And that brings us to week 9, a loss so sad and pathetic it might literally cause Derek Carr to spend the remainder of his days roaming the streets looking for vigilante justice in a funny-looking suit instead of playing football. Prior to their matchup, the Indianapolis Colts began smoking high-grade crack and literally hired Jeff Saturday out of the announcer's booth, and he promptly tapped a low-level assistant to call his plays. A week before, Saturday had tweeted this and became the only dude ever to rise up off his couch and go out and back up his Twitter smack talk in the history of man. After reinserting Matt Ryan into the lineup, Saturday's Colts beat Sunday's Raiders 25-20. And again, a peculiar choice by McDaniels to go for 2 in the fourth quarter left a lot of people scratching their heads, and a lot of Twitter users dunking on the Raiders. Derek Carr was so emotional after the loss, he cried over the physical demands his teammates and he are going through to be such a bad football team. You can tell losing is tearing up his insides like Indian curry on an empty stomach. McDaniels afterwards said his post-game presser sounded like a broken record. He was honest about his future, saying he's going to go to work and that they all have jobs that they have to do. The question is, for how long? Part 3. What do the Raiders do? We can give Josh McDaniels an out for his team injuries. His DBs are injured to shit, and now Hunter Renfrow is out too. Blake Martinez had enough of this Raider team, so much so he quit before they even played the Colts. Injuries or not, let's look at some stats that may give insight as to if McDaniels is the problem or not. The Raiders rank in the bottom third in nearly every offensive category except passing offense, where they are ranked 12th. They have ran the 30 fewest plays, but are 19th in time of possession. It's alarming that McDaniels, deemed an offensive guru in New England, doesn't necessarily have an explosive offense, even with Davante Adams. On defense, they are expectedly bad, ranking dead last in sacks with only 10, allowing an opposing QBR of 107, also dead last. They are 28th in the league in yards allowed per game at 376, and are letting opponents convert third downs 48.7% of the time, 30th in the league. Okay, so maybe McDaniels can use Patrick Graham as an scapegoat. I said that wrong on purpose. However, there is one stat that's pretty indicative of bad coaching: penalties per game. Penalties mean a lack of discipline, and the Raiders give up 6.7 of them a game, 26th in the NFL. However, that's actually down from last year. Now, the stat that is indicative that McDaniels sucks is his 0-6 record in one-score games. Rich Bisaccia was 5-2 in such games last year without Davante Adams. You can see how much coaching makes a difference. Look at Kevin O'Connell, Robert Salah, Brian Dable, and Nick Sirianni. Pulling the right levers when it matters is a coach's most important job. Excuses or not, the results aren't there for McDaniels, and his entire career record reflects that. So what are the Raiders to do, knowing they hired a lemon? Bring him back, of course. According to reports, the Raiders are so cash poor after the Gruden fiasco and the move to Las Vegas that even if they wanted to fire McDaniels, which is painfully obvious they should, they can't. Mark Davis has already announced no matter what, McDaniels is coming back next year, and that Josh is doing a great job. Guess what? It's about to get worse. There could already be serious roster turnover. You know, like with Derek Carr. Hell, they already cut former first-round pick Jonathan Abram, as the Raiders might look to clean house and start fresh and actually start drafting well. Whether McDaniels is there when and if the team starts winning again, who knows? But it's pretty clear right now the team can't afford to have him keep coaching for them, but also can't afford to fire him. Roll those tanks, baby.